name's Amanda, for those that are new, and for those that have joined us again, welcome again. Been a busy morning already. A few little hiccups. We've had my car, my RAV, had broken down. It was going up to the mechanics today, and of course we've gone out the first thing this morning after I'd fed all the livestock, and of course I've got a completely dead car. Of course somebody might have left some batteries in the car, maybe a light running yesterday after I cleaned it. I don't know, either way. Hubby had to come home from work, he was jump started, so he's a little bit not happy. But the car's off at the mechanics now. So my son and I went up and drove two of the cars over to the mechanics, dropped the car off. My son and I came back, and he's requested some bread, which he's not gluten intolerant. He wants normal bread, and due to the pantry challenge, which he's not impressed about, but he accepts it. He knows that I need to bake bread, so I'm going to do, I've got some sourdough starter. My daughter makes sourdough, and she's given me some of her discard, and so it's been sitting in the fridge for a couple of days, and so I need to use it. So I was going to use it to do crackers, but instead I'm going to make English muffins, but my son's not able to hear me, so we're not going to be doing any dairy in the English muffins. I will use normal flour because the sourdough starter will have normal flour in it, but I'll use all-purpose flour for his instead of switching it out to gluten-free. But that being said, I'll make another batch later on without using the gluten. So let's go and mix some English muffin dough together. It's going to have to rise, and it's a nice 9 degrees in the house, so this is going to take a little bit longer than it should do to get it to rise. So we might need to do this in a couple of steps, but we'll give it a go. Now, being a bread recipe, I'm going to use scales. I'm going to weigh everything instead of using cup measurements. So I need to halve this recipe. This is a big recipe that normally makes 25 quite large English muffins, and I don't want to make that many, so I'm only going to make a dozen of them. So I'm just going to reduce my normal recipe down by half and go from there. So the first thing I'm going to need is a couple of 100 grams of coconut cream. So when I was just approaching the pantry challenge, I actually went out to a commercial kitchen and stocked up on a whole heap of products that they were clearing. The kitchen had closed down, and one of the ingredients that I did get from them was some coconut cream. Normally I wouldn't have the amount that we have here, so I've got about 24 cans of coconut cream, and it's a small size, so it's not a big deal. So I just need to use up 200 grams of the coconut cream. So I'm just going to put it all straight in the mixing bowl, ready to add to the mixer. Now, because it is cold, that's quite solid, so I'm going to have to break that up as well. I need 200 mils of warm water and 20 grams of instant yeast, so I'll add that as well. The warm water will help to warm up that coconut cream. So we've got the coconut cream, the warm water, and the instant yeast. I've used 10 grams of instant yeast. I'm just going to use half a teaspoon of salt, and then I just need another about 15 or so grams of sugar. Now I'm also going to need 40 grams of an oil. I'm using avocado oil because that's what we have. You can use olive oil or vegetable oil if you want to as well. So just 40 grams of that as well. And then I need a total of 600 of flour. Now, because I am using the sourdough starter, I'm going to put the sourdough in as well, and then I'll see how much extra plain flour I'm going to need. So this is just the discard from a sourdough, which is still lovely and active. So I'm just going to put this in as well. So in total, I need 600 grams. So I've done half of the sourdough starter and half of plain flour, so about 300 grams of each of those. I'm just going to give that a mix through with the machine with the dough hook until that's combined. It's quite a wet mix at the moment. I might have to add some extra flour because I've used that sourdough discard. Time will tell. So yeah, it's been a big day, busy day already, and time is ticking away, and I've still got quite a few jobs that I need to get done. I have fed the goats, I fed the dogs, been out to the gardens and checked all the birds and as well in the chicken pens. So most of the outside work's done except for the firewood and that type of stuff. I've checked my app on the phone, so I know that we're generating enough solar power at the moment that I can use the ovens to cook with, and it won't trip the power back to the grid. We'll just let that do its thing. So yeah, solar power during the day, and then normal power at night time when the grid's not producing. So it's just a matter of keeping an eye on our energy usage. I do. So it keeps our bills right down, keeps them to about $150 a month for us, and that's pretty good. Our power bills used to be around $1,100 a quarter, and now they're around $450 a quarter. So it's definitely been worth putting the solar system on. It's just managing to use the solar system to its best use, and because we don't get a lot of money for the rebate back to the grid for the excess usage, it makes more sense that that's when I use all of the power. Okay, just gave it a whip up until it has come together. This is now going to get transferred into this container here until it doubles in size. So I'll just pop a marker on the side of the container once I've filled it up with this dough, so I can track once it reaches that. Because it is cold, it's a bit difficult to tell how long this is going to take. Okay, so that's our muffin mix. It just needs now to rise, so proof for as long as it takes. And like I said, it is cold here, so I'm just going to pop a mark, which is just a laminated sticker, just on the outside. Give me an idea when that is doubled its size. Okay, popping on a lid and finding somewhere warm, good luck with that, where I can pop this. I might leave it, I'll have to go get a thermometer gauge to see where it's warmest here. Might just leave it here for now while I get onto the tidying up and getting the oven preheated and the cast iron pan ready. Everywhere's too cold. All right, so I'm going to pop it in a water bath instead. So just running some tap water, which would be about 60 odd degrees. That's better than what it is near the window where it's 9 degrees. So just going to pop in a hot bath while it doubles in its size, and then I can move on to measuring out 90 grams, 80 to 90 grams for the English muffins, and rolling up about a dozen or so of them and baking them. So yesterday was garlic processing day again, day 2. Day 3 was the end of it, thank goodness. So I ended up with some really nice garlic granules. I only did 2 trays in the dehydrator because I do have quite a lot of garlic powder already on the shelves. So I've just dehydrated some garlic granules, the remainder of them. The rest of them I did blend up, so I had about double this quantity. But it's a nice golden colour. It's not overly cooked because of the low heat. So when I use my machine, 60 degrees for as long as it takes for it to dry. In this case, it was about 10 to 12 hours for it to completely dry out, and then I let it sit overnight in the dehydrator, and I ended up with a nice pale, not overly caramelized garlic, which then when it gets blended up in the coffee grinder or in the herb grinder here as well, it ends up with a nice pale coloured a garlic powder, which I can then use to make garlic salt or just add directly into soups and stews and things. And it works out about, for every half or quarter teaspoon equals a clove of garlic, so it's quite intense, so you don't need to use very much. I've made up a garlic butter. I haven't looked at this yet. I made up a garlic butter because I need to make a flatbread as well. It's not too bad. So this is a garlic and onion butter for using to make the flatbreads later on as well. So it's about 120 grams of butter, and to that I've added 1 teaspoon of garlic powder and about half a teaspoon of the green onion powder that we made a few days ago as well when I was doing the dehydration of the green shallots from the garden. So that's made up my herb paste, which will then get used on the garlic breads when I make them up as well. So I'm just going to vacuum seal the granules because I won't need those for a while. They may actually go off to my daughter. So I'll just vacuum seal those ones for now. Won't do the powder because I'll use that later on as well when I'm doing up some of the soups, because I'm going to do a pumpkin soup from the shelves. Being the pantry challenge, I'm low on tomato soup, but I'm quite low on potato and pumpkin soup. I've got one one of the potato and one of the pumpkin left, but I do have some processed pumpkin already in jars that I can use as well, so I can make a pumpkin soup really quickly that won't use too much power in the house, since I'm going to be using the oven today. So I'm going to use the 2 jars of, that's butternut pumpkin that was diced and pressure canned. I'm also going to use one of the jars of onion, because this is equal to 2 onions, and also need some capsicum as well. So I'm just going to use one of the smaller jars, because I'm going to make a Thai pumpkin soup, and then the excess, because it's way too much for me to consume, will then get put back into jars. Now I'm also going to need some vegetable stock, and I might use this because it's lower, easier for me to get. So I'll get 2 of those, which will be 1.5 litres, 3 of them, of vegetable stock. I'm going to use one of the corns, and I need a potato as well. I'll use one of the corns. I usually add that to the soup afterwards, but I'll put it in now. And I also need one of those quarts of potatoes as well. So as you see, uses a lot of jars very quickly when I do the soup. This will make about 4.5, 5 litres by the time I'm finished. The only other ingredient that needs now is some garlic powder and chili sauce. Where's the chili sauce? Some small amount of chili sauce and a tablespoon of the Thai red curry paste, which is in the fridge. But other than that, dinner's made in about half an hour instead of 3 or 4 hours. So it saves a lot of money with the power bills as well, not having to run the stove for such a long period of time. So I'm going to open all these jars. You don't need to see that. And I'm just going to empty all of them into a stock pot and get the pumpkin soup cooking. All right, so aromatics in first. So I'm going to, that's the Thai curry paste, red Thai curry paste. The jars of onions, juice and all, because that's extra flavour, because they've been canned in just water, no added salt to the onions. The capsicums, oh, that's got a kick. And we'll just let that come up to temperature, and then I'll add the pumpkin and the vegetable stock. Some garlic powder in now, and some white pepper. So I've just added some paprika, garlic powder, salt, and that's all. So just a teaspoon of each of those. You can adjust your seasoning, and pepper, just some white pepper. You can adjust the seasoning as you like it. This is all going to get blended up afterwards, once it's all come back up to temperature. So in goes the vegetable stock and the pumpkin as well. And then I just need to add the potatoes. Now, don't have to use exactly the same vegetables. If you don't want to use potato in with your pumpkin soup, you don't have to. I sometimes use beans instead of adding the potato, and if I had plain beans ready, I probably would be doing that, but I don't have any soaked, so I need to get onto that as well, obviously. So I'm going to use the potato to help thicken the soup, and I need to get the corn as well. Okay, so potatoes are in, corn is in, and the liquid from the corn went in, not the liquid from the potato. I just didn't want that additional starch. Now, I am going to be blending this. Now, this is a vegetable soup, and I've done the measurements so that I have 50% of solids and 50% of liquids by adding the stocks as well as the additional liquid that all of the vegetables were preserved in. This makes a really loose soup, not a very thick soup. It is going to be pureed. You do not have to puree this if you do not want to. You can just separate the chunks to the bottom of each of the jars and puree it later. I puree it because that's what I do in my kitchen, but I definitely wouldn't recommend you necessarily copying that. But like I said, in the book that I'm following, which is from one of the American guides, there is a recipe in here for a vegetable soup which is blended. And it does say that as long as it's 50% of your vegetables and 50% of the stock, then that's okay. And that's what I'm doing in my kitchen. And all of the ingredients are pre-cooked prior to going into jars, so they're not going to expand anymore. And they are a very liquid, this is one here, it is a very thin soup. Okay, it's not a thick soup. So I'm comfortable doing that. Of course, you don't have to, but that's just what I'm going to be doing. All right, so I'm just bringing that up to temperature, and then it needs to be simmering for about 20 minutes or so before I then blend it to create the soup. Now, while that's happening, I'll just check on the dough, which is rising at the moment. So no surprises, multitasking as always, because I've only got a short window of time that we have that solar panels generating enough power to use the stove and the ovens, and I need to do some pressure cooking afterwards with the soup. It'll be going into jars and going straight into a pressure cooker, so I also need to get that ready. So it is going to be using a little bit of power today. Now, while I'm doing the soup, it's just coming up to simmer now, I'm going to use the leftover coconut cream as well. I'm going to tip that water out. When I blend it up, I'm going to add the remainder of that little tiny bit of coconut cream. It's not dairy, so the proteins are different. I don't do it until I've heated it up though, until the soup's been blended up. And then I'll separate the soup into two parts, one that I'm going to be bottling, one that I'm going to be keeping out and putting in the fridge, and what I'll be keeping out, I'll add the coconut cream to that portion. The rest of it will be going into my fowl of the cola number 27s, and I should be able to get 4 jars. I'll go get another jar, probably 4 jars of these 850ml, only cut to just past the shoulder, not in the neck area. I'll also get my canner ready as well. The oven is preheating, and I'm about to get the dough out as well, ready to start forming the English muffins, and I'm going to bake them in the oven. So I've just used the immersion blender just to blend this nice and smooth. So as you can see, it's a very thin soup. You can call this a rebel recipe if you like. I just call it an original recipe. This is what we've always been done in our family. I've always used this, and we've always water canned it. I'm making it a little bit safer, I guess, by pressure canning it, but our family would normally add the coconut cream, or the coconut milk rather, to the recipe and then bottle that. So that's always worked for 3-4 generations, but I understand that people aren't following the older ways for whatever reason. This is how I'm doing my soup. So I just need now to get this into jars. The hot water that I've used to warm my jars is also now about to get put into the pressure canner. That's a Presto canner. It's going to go directly into the Presto canner, so my jars are nice and hot, but the water will then be nice and warm and it won't be wasted either. Now, one thing I do though is, because I have used an immersion blender, I'll add a lot of air to the soup, so I really do mix it until those bubbles have dispersed again, and the soup's a lot flatter, doesn't have all of that aeration in it before I start putting it into the jars. It's a huge ladle, but it'll work. And then when I'm doing the fowler, you can see how thin that is. It's no different to a stock. So when I do the Fowler jar, so this is a jar system that's used here in Australia and has been forever. These bottles actually that I'm using, the 27s, were last manufactured in 1976. These jars of mine go back to the 1950s by the stamp that's inside them. Now, usually you would do an inch head space. I don't go above that shoulder. That's my line for any liquid when it comes to using the Fowler, the cola jars, and that way I don't end up with siphoning. I'm just going to fill all these jars up. So I've got 5 bottles of the pumpkin soup. The jars have got their rings added to the tops as well. Now they just simply need to get their lids securely put on, and then the clips go over the top into the pressure canner they're going to go, and I'm going to cook these for 60 minutes. Okay, so I've put the clips on and made sure my lids are nice and level. Now, with this system, the bottles themselves are not designed for pressure canning. They're designed for water bathing, but they're such good qualities, and these have been used a lot over decades. People have been doing this, and so I'm confident now using the Fowler the Colas. I was not when I first started. It did make me very nervous using my old jars. I don't use my 1950 Fowler the Cola jars, only my ones that are sort of 70s. And I know that's still 50 years old, but it's a lot better than using the green glass ones, for me anyway. I just can't imagine putting them in a pressure canner and losing them. Now, these particular jars, I do have 2 clips on. You can only use one if you choose to. When I'm pressure canning, I use the 2, because the lids can go skewiff when they're being pressure canned for a long period of time, and I think 60 minutes pressure canning with these soups, it does make me concerned. So if it was a short time, I wouldn't worry. I might just use the one clip, but when I'm doing a longer canning time, I do use 2 clips. But it is said by the company that you only need to use 1. That being said, the company are not suggesting using 1 for pressure canning. They're suggesting using 1 for water bathing. So I'm sticking with my 2, making sure my lids are well secured, and into the canner they can go now for 60 minutes. And our dough for the English muffins is well and truly ready. So curiously, I've taken 8 jars in total off my pantry shelves, and I've turned that into 5 jars instead, but they're bigger jars. 5 jars to process into the pumpkin soup, plus enough left over for myself as well for dinner. I think it was 9 jars actually, but either way, so I've got less jars but more stock going back on the shelves. Right, on to the English muffin dough because it's ready. Okay, there's our English muffin mix, well and truly now double what it was previously. So I need just to knock it down. Now this is a wet dough, okay? It is a sticky dough, but that's okay because we're going to knock it down. We're going to put it onto a floured surface just till it forms a ball, and then we're just going to measure out approximately 80-gram balls and roll them up and pop them onto the tray, which I'm using a cast iron tray, and I'm going to let them rise a second time. Okay, sorry about that. Just got distracted and everything switched off while I was out, so I've had to split this into 2. So the English muffins have now cooked, as well as the loaf has also cooked, and the timer to the pressure canner has just gone off as well. So at least I can get that out and show you the end results. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Used too much power, and we flipped over to the grid, which then tripped the internet to switch off, and the internet has just come back on again. But also I didn't press record on my phone, and that's just a me thing. I seem to forget to press record. Much easier when I'm using the camera, but it's a lot harder to use the camera because I'm not preparing to do a video. You know, it's just, this is what our day is like here at the time. So I thought that I'd just bring you along for a show and tell, sort of spend the day while I'm doing all of this work. Because doing the canning as well as baking on the same day is not something I tend to do. It's either a baking day or a canning day, and canning days can be 3 or 4 in a row, so I can get quite busy doing that. It all depends on the livestock, the weather, and whether or not I have other duties outside. Especially during summer and spring, I don't spend hardly any time at all in the kitchen itself. Most of the time is spent in the gardens, in the nurseries. So I'm either doing the livestock during winter, which is what I've been dealing with the last few months, getting all that sorted, and preparing to get the veggie gardens ready again for spring. We had a cyclone that came through here. Where's my stuff behind me? Great view you've got. Sorry. A cyclone hit the Redlands coast in March. We're in August. So in March this year, and being a property up in the ranges, above sea level, but still higher up, we got a lot of the wind, and that brought down a lot of trees and did a lot of infrastructure damage around the property, which we're still sorting through slowly. It just all takes time, and during winter, because it's been so wet, it's been hard to get on top of the jobs that we would normally be well and truly prepared for by now. So we are just playing catch up. My husband works away from the property. I work here full time, and it is full time. And I also do all of the cooking, cleaning, ordering of everything, and as much maintenance here is that I can do as well. Speaking of which, I've just ordered livestock feed once again. That's now going to arrive tomorrow. It's Eka time here in Brisbane. I really need a chair to sit down on. Yeah, it's Eka time. So Eka is, for those that don't know, that's a huge big country meets the city, brings all of their livestock and has this big event. Basically, it's just like a giant big circus parade type thing that goes on for 3 or 4 days. But then in the Redlands, we have a public holiday on a different day to what Brisbane City does. So my husband works in the Redlands as well. So he has a couple of days off so we can catch up and get a little bit of work done if it's not wet and overcast and terrible. But I've just contacted our normal supplier of our feed for the goats and the poultry and things like that. And they've basically told me it's snowball's chance in hell that I'm going to get a delivery this next week, which is a problem because I need feed for well, it's a problem for the goats. No, yeah, that's a problem for me. Yeah, so they have just called me back and let me know that they can do a delivery run tomorrow. So I need to now go down to the stables and make space for another 10 squares. It's not many. It's not my normal amount that I would get, but 10 squares to get me through until the ec is over and all of the delivery schedules are back to normal again. And then I've also got poultry coming in the next week or so. So I also need to get on to bedding in the pens and finish putting electric fences up and checking the converter thingy that sets off the power transformer, because it's been sitting outside. It's covered, but it's been sitting outside in the poultry pen area for a few years. So I need to make sure that's still all working, or I'm going to need another transformer as well to fox-proof. So a few things. Right, the soup has nearly come back down to pressure, but I can show you the English muffins. Now my son has already eaten 2 of them, which is a good thing. That means they're pretty good. All right, so they're lovely and soft. I'm going to cut one open and toast it up for you guys to have a look at them. And I might put some of that garlic butter on that I made earlier this morning as well, which is just how we want them. Lots of little pockets full of air. So I'll toast one of them up at the moment. The rest of them I'll pop away. And then I'll slice up the bread. My son is not going to slice up anything. He will not be able to do that. So I might slice up the loaf as well, and then I can pop that into a bread bag and into the freezer. Looks pretty good. I might let that cool a bit longer actually and get on to the jars instead. So English muffins. A pack of English muffins is $6 for 6 English muffins. My calculations is that these have cost me about 30 odd cents each to make, which is why I would not buy English muffins at that cost. I've just got to cook up some bacon and eggs as well and pop the extra ones from the loaf I'm going to cut up. Cook up bacon and eggs, put them onto the loaf, and then I'll freeze them for quick and easy meals for my son and husband to take to work. All right, back to the pumpkin soup. Now the pressure can has come back down to correct pressure. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's cold. It's warmed up in the house. It's probably about 12 degrees now. There's a lot of steam coming from the pressure canner, even though it's been open. So I've just cracked the lid and just left it open on the side. I don't want the jars to siphon afterwards. So I'm just going to let all that steam out and just let the jars come back to more like a room temperature before I remove them from the canner, because otherwise the risk is that I end up with some excess siphoning. Bubbling's okay, but not siphoning. So I just need them to come back to a bit of a better temperature. So I'm just going to let that steam out first. Nice clear water. Still bubbling a little bit. I've got the top off now. Just going to wait another 5 minutes. I'm not going to rush this process. This is the stage where things could go really wrong, especially using the fowl of the colas. So patience, I find, is best for this stage in the cooking. So I don't want to undo all of that hard work that I've done making all of the soups. It's now way too cold to even be thinking about cooking on the stove because of the amount of less power we're generating, obviously because we've tripped the power while I had the ovens going, so I can't use any excess power now to do any further cooking today. So this is it. If this fails now, then there's no dinner tonight. And we have 5 jars. I just about dropped the last one. Okay, 5 jars out, not touching them now. These lids now have to completely cool for overnight, at least 24 hours, preferably, until I remove those lids because of the rim system. Those bands are now very hot, and if I took those rings off early, they're just going to break. So I'm just going to leave them now. There's pumpkin soup, all done, finished, and that's the end of the video. Thanks for joining me. Sorry about having to split it into two. It's just sometimes the way things go. All right. Thank you. Bye now.